So the MOS groups originally came from Melbourne. MOS stands for Melbourne Old School Skateboarders. And these were guys that I knew in the 1970s, and they're in their 50s and 60s today, and they're still skating. 20 years ago, they started supporting water projects in Swaziland, and it's really grown out of that. And then one of the skaters wanted to start a deck show. You know, this was, I don't know, 10 years ago, and the idea of doing art on skateboard decks wasn't that common. In fact, when I first heard about it, I thought, okay, well, and I'm happy to participate, but okay, see what happens. But it really has taken off.
Number love for the old school, that's what we're gonna do this one for, you feel me?
It's become quite an important event, not just for skaters, but also for artists as well.
I remember Mr. Magic Flash, Grandmaster Castle, raising hell, but...
We're currently in Instituto Barry Besos, which is in San Martin on the edge of La Mina. I volunteered to teach the kids an art class about collage, and then I said to the director, we have this project where I have artists that produce art on skateboard decks to raise funds for drinking water in Africa. So, you know, he gave me access to the space where I can come here and work. A bit like, you know, having a studio, really. So they could come here with me and I would teach them about sanding down the decks, putting on a canvas. They made lots of cardboard boxes that the finished decks would go in, and we'd send them out to the artists. So there was lots of little jobs that the students could help with. My name's John French. I'm an artist from Australia and I'm currently living in Barcelona. I run the local chapter of the MOS Foundation. MOS Foundation is an NGO of skaters, artists, surfers and musicians, and we raise money for drinking water projects in rural Swaziland. At the moment I'm working on these 3 decks. These all come from, you can see the recycled ones here. All of these are collected from the skate shops in Barcelona. And this is just one work I'm doing at the moment, which I'm just collecting things from my personal life that I've inset into the surface of the deck. These, you can see, they're just made with canvases on the recycled skate decks. The canvases are actually old sun blinds. You find them in the trash. You know, then it's not like an artist's canvas of cotton, but they work perfectly for what we do. Once the deck's covered with canvas, it sort of looks a bit like this. You know, this is being primed at the moment. All of these things, the sun blinds are found in the rubbish. You see them out sometimes at the end of summer in bars. You see them in rubbish containers. Sometimes I find, you know, old cans of paint like these ones over here, and then that can be used to prime the canvases. I cycle everywhere and I love to discover the little streets and all of the hidden details of the city. You know, the things that have survived the onslaught of modernisation. This street sign's actually quite rare in Barcelona. It's one of the few in Spanish. After Franco, the town hall and the Generalitat had a policy that all street signs have to be in Catalan. This one, it seems to have gone under the radar, and it's the only sign that I know that's in Spanish. This is the great anti-fascist fighter. She's part of the Franco resistance. Her name's Neus Català. She died a few years ago. She was over 100 years old, but she survived the Nazi concentration camps, and she was well known for sabotaging the weapons production that she had to do inside those camps. All of the decks come from the skate shops in Barcelona, and they save them for me and I go and collect them. Pues muchísimas gracias.
Mira, esta tabla concretamente, pues ya para proyectos de arte, porque esta tabla está partida, entonces no tiene sentido volverla a montar porque en cualquier momento se va a romper.
But you can see here, there's a concave, you know, under the tail and at the nose of the board. Once you stick the canvas on top, it's actually quite difficult for canvas to adhere. So you've got to use a lot of glue here, and that's particularly rough there, which is good because that means the wood glue has something to key into it. That's why these have to be sanded down. If they were just left like this with the graphics, there's no way that glue would stick to that. Once you remove the graphics, the maple has been dyed underneath. And this dye, this one's red, this one here was a purple. This is a water-based dye. So the moment you put water on it, that runs. Really, it's not suitable to use for art unless you're using spray. But generally, I will put a canvas on it for that reason, because the moment that you put water on this, the dye that's used on the deck begins to run and it comes through the canvas, actually penetrates the canvas. I try to give the artist a totally blank deck. Most of the high quality decks have some kind of wood dye in them. The cheaper decks don't. So this is a cheaper deck. I think this was produced by Sauer, and these ones are actually not very common. This deck's just a work in progress. It's about things that I've found. Well, I actually thought about the idea of making a deck that was like a museum. So the idea was to inlay objects almost in a sort of religious way inside the deck itself. So, I mean, it's going to be secured in there, but they all have their own little cavities that, that's a few centimeters deep. I'm going to start preparing a deck just to show you how it's done. Here's one of the decks. It's got stickers on it. It's got wax on it from doing slides. You can see here there's quite a lot of difficult to get this stuff off. So I've got a belt on the sander and I'm just quickly going to whip all of this off and really make that very rough so that I can glue a canvas on there. I've sanded down this deck with the belt sander with very, very coarse sandpaper. And here that it's broken, but it doesn't matter. The canvas will go around those breaks. Put that on top. And because these sunshades have been in the sun for years, you've got to be careful because when you pull on them, they're actually quite weak, so they can rip. That's one of the problems of using recycled materials. One thing I thought that was quite interesting about skaters is that skaters don't really understand the environmental cost of the maple they're using. So these skate decks haven't really changed since the 1970s. They've tried making skate decks out of bamboo, but for street skating, generally maple is still the best. The wood that's used in the deck comes from the base of the maple tree, the main trunk, and the trees have to be at least 60 years old. And that's actually older than skateboarding, right? I'll give these boards a few coats of paint. Sometimes maybe a final layer might actually have some plaster mixed into the paint so it fills in all of the gap in the fabric. And that also means that I can sand it down. Often the students from the school come and help me do this activity as well. I don't work by myself. We have got 60 artists, so I've prepared a lot of decks. And what we do is we give these decks out to the artists, and then the artists do their artwork on the deck. Some artists prefer to have a wooden deck. It doesn't matter in what condition it's in.
Mi obra representa un ser mitológico, es como una bicalavera cíclope, porque solo tiene un ojo al lado y lado, y es como un efecto óptico que parece que las calaveras invertidas por un espejo invisible, como si estuvieran flotando, y a la vez son luminosas porque hay una instalación lumínica. Aquí tenim les escorrialles de la taula de skate que vaig museïtzar per la Moth Foundation. Per a mi l'skate era com un record d'infantesa perduda, perquè jo havia tingut un skate i havia intentat tirar-me per la halfpipe, però em fotia d'hòsties, me hacía muchos piños, y mi tío pasó con el coche encima de mi skate por error y me duró poco. O sea que cuando me propusieron de hacer esa intervención del skate, pues no me lo pensé dos veces. Aparte de que ya había trabajado con skates alguna otra vez, y la particularidad del skate es és el contraxapat, aquest laminat tan massís, no? Que deixar que l'esquei, la taula, s'aguanti per un fil ben prim de fusta. El projecte de la Moss Foundation està molt ben fet perquè ells t'ofereixen el material i t'ofereixen l'entrega i la recollida i per tant la dedicació que hi tenim els artistes és el nostre temps, no? Hola a todo el mundo, me llamo Edgar Massaú, vivo en mi propia casa museo, que està ubicada a Sarrià de Ter, al costat de Girona, i us convido tots a visitar-la i descobrir què s'amaga a cada racó de les estances.
We collect the finished artwork, and in Melbourne and in Barcelona we have a simultaneous online auction. So there's a physical auction in galleries. We've got the Base Elements Gallery in El Gótico, they're putting on the show, so there'll be about 60 decks there. And then in Melbourne at the Magnet Gallery in Docklands, they will be having maybe 150 decks. But then the decks, you can go to the physical exhibition and see the work, but if you want to buy the work, you've got to bid for the decks online in a silent auction. So you go to the website, you look at a deck that you like, you read about the artist, you can read what the artist says about his or her work, you can go to their Instagram, go to their website. When you see the rest of the artist's body of work, the deck that they do makes more sense, right? So it's really important to see that these people are completely dedicated to their art. And then the auction's open for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and everybody bids online and everything sells. So, my work sold for, over $500. Some work sells for more, some work sells for thousands, some work just sell for a couple of hundred. It all adds up, and it really makes a huge difference for the rural communities in Swaziland that all of the money goes to the cause, right?
Me and my homies breaking nights trying to keep it true. Out on the roof sipping 90 proof and nothing like the old school.
We do have sponsors that pay for the additional expenses such as the postage.
Like the old school.
So for sending decks for artists outside Barcelona, because I know people are doing it tough, so I wouldn't want them to be out of pocket. But if they can donate their skills and their time, that's fantastic.
Que s'acaba fent una subhasta que realment veus que recapta diners i que les teves mans s'hagin pogut transformar a través d'un comprador és positiu per a la comunitat africana que necessita aigua. I a més això et permet també, sobretot el que han aconseguit és que una sèrie d'artistes que estan afincats a Barcelona, que són d'arreu del món, que nosaltres no coneixíem, la majoria, doncs ara ja siguem també com una comunitat, no? I artistes, això, superinteressants. És una manera de teixir xarxa entre Barcelona i el rest del planeta.
So we have shows in Melbourne and Barcelona that are happening in November. We have a show in Sydney, and we have a show in Queensland on the Gold Coast, and we also have a show in Hawaii. All of the money goes to support drinking water systems in rural Swaziland, supplying water to 120 rural households. So these are like subsistence farmers in rural Swaziland, but it's actually really important for girls because girls have the job to go and collect water. And if they've got a tap in their community, it makes a huge difference, and it means that they can not spend hours searching or collecting water, but they can then dedicate themselves to their studies. So what we do is we pay for the infrastructure, the materials to make catchment areas, storage tanks, pipes, pumps and tap stands, but the workers have, the villagers have to do the manual labour. So we work with an engineer on the ground in Swaziland called Bruce Jamison, and he sort of runs a team and he explains to everybody what needs to be done, what trenches have to be dug, and helps in maintaining the system. It seems to be working quite successfully. So on the ground things are going quite well. I've lived in Barcelona for over 10 years. I'm based in Poblenou, and at the end of the street there's a skate park here, and I come down to check out the skaters. I love it here. It's right on the coast, and you know, Barcelona is a great place. Good art. It's good for art. It's just a good quality of life here.